Today is Friday, September the 13th, 2024. And last night I shared this photo that I took of my bedroom window from outside while I was walking chilly. And I thought the picture had such a glazed, airy tone to it that Friday the 13th might be a good time to share it because it reminds me so much of the feather of Ma'at. The Greek version is Themis. It seemed to me a fitting symbol to continue our discussion about sovereign citizenship and restorative justice. Let me start this video by sharing a post from this morning directed towards people within households where there are officials of the government or of corporate entities living, and there are people within that home that are essentially enabling behavior at home that transfers over to work and back, and really is at the root of the problems that all of us are having. I wrote, can I just say something to people at home who are in collusion with government and corporate officials about why you are a huge part of both the current problems and the solution? Your person, spouse or children, should not be performing work that creates all kinds of hell for me and my family and our home, and then get to leave that work to come to their home and have peace. No one should be putting up with their bullshit at work, and no one should be putting up with their bullshit at home either. If I do not have peace at home, no one has peace. If you are made aware that your person, spouse or child or children, are harming other people and their families, you have an obligation to do something about that. I just want to make that clear. I posted this last night, and before I share the full context of the post, I did watch this full Sovereign Citizen Moments compilation last night, and there are two things that I want to say about people who present themselves as sovereign citizens like this. The first is I have absolutely no tolerance for people who are disrespectful for no rational reason whatsoever. And part of the reason I believe that these individuals are so arrogant is because they truly do live in a different reality than the general population, because they are involved in hidden militia type organizations that are actually backed and funded by the federal government. Therefore, they have experienced some sense of immunity to legal prosecution that the general population have not also been afforded for obvious reasons. And because of this, as they have grown, their understanding of the law and how the law works has been severely distorted. And so once they are ejected from those systems, they don't know how to live amongst citizens who have been following the civil laws and court system as they currently exist. And this also includes attorneys and judges, because even they are not all aware of this hidden aspect of our federal government. So you have to keep that in mind. These people have been told that they can get away with this or that or the other thing, and then they actually have been able to get away with it. And so they really don't have a concept of how the law system works for everybody else, which is why they present themselves the way that they do. So before I share how I responded to what I observed, I want to provide or to share an educational video on the discovery process, because you need to understand that there's a difference between pretrial hearings and an actual trial, which is where a lot of these people get hung up, because they assume that since they are in court, they are having a trial, and that's not what's happening. So let's start with that. And this is related to civil discovery, but I want to kind of help some of these folks to understand. I want you to see or understand the word settlement in a civil case as the same thing as a plea deal in a criminal case, because it is the same. And the way that the process moves is the same. The difference is that a lot of times in criminal cases, the defendants are not aware of all of the paperwork that's being passed back and forth between the attorneys. They're just told, because I mean, it's a lot of legalese and it doesn't necessarily make sense for them to have to read through it all. But during the discovery process for someone like me, I wouldn't need an attorney. I would literally read through everything that was submitted to me to determine whether or not it was valid, because that is their evidence and what they would use in trial, and that's the purpose of the process. But anyway, I'll let someone else explain it to you, and hopefully you'll be able to understand what I'm saying so that we can move on.
In this video, we will discuss the relationship between discovery and settlement in the United States. Discovery is the process where parties to a civil litigation obtain and disclose evidence prior to trial. Settlement is where the parties to a civil litigation agree to end the litigation prior to trial, or at least prior to the end of the trial. Discovery encourages settlement in at least two ways.
Remember how I told you that when I have had clients referred to me that I wouldn't read the information in advance until I had a chance to meet the person, and then I would compare the information that was sent to me from people who had met them before with my own impressions before I made a decision about what needed to be done. I wanted to share with you that there is no, if you are innocent until proven guilty, then there is no bad guy at the beginning of the trial. You have the person who is being accuses evidence that they are innocent, and you have the evidence of the person who is accusing them that they are guilty. And that's it. And when you are dealing with a relationally based court system, you have to look at both people as human beings and try to understand what happened and for what reason in order to come up with an appropriate corrective action. I just wanted to make sure I included that here.
Discovery encourages settlement in at least two ways. First, it informs parties of the strengths and weaknesses of their case. So let's say we have a plaintiff, Patty, and a defendant, David, and Patty sues David for breach of contract. And we'll say that David, the defendant, counterclaims against Patty, alleging that it was she who breached the contract. As part of discovery, prior to trial, the parties will share documentary evidence and also speak to the relevant witnesses. David will demand that Patty disclose all documents concerning the contract. And we'll say Patty has an email that she sent to a friend in which she admits that she breached her contract with David. Of course, Patty is going to demand that David disclose his documents concerning the contract too. The parties will share with each other the evidence concerning the case. Patty, looking at the evidence for her case and against her case, decides she's probably going to lose. Patty calculates that it's possible that a jury will award David $100,000. Specifically, she concludes that there is a 60% chance that David will be awarded $100,000 by a jury. After making this calculation, she gets a call from David. David and his lawyer propose to Patty and her lawyer that the parties can end the case if Patty pays David $50,000. Patty now must calculate, should she continue litigating or just pay the $50,000 and end the case? Patty and her lawyer believe that if the case goes to trial, David has a 60% chance of winning $100,000. Patty decides to spend the $50,000 to end the case instead of taking a chance at trial. The parties reach a settlement and the civil litigation is over. Sharing all the evidence before trial resulted in a settlement. The time and expense of discovery also encourage settlement. Discovery can take up a lot of time and also a lot of money. For example, in a big case, consider the costs of attorneys reviewing documents. Parties that settle early can avoid the costs of discovery. Does Patty really want to put all her money into discovery? Instead, she could just give some money to her adversary and end the case. Both the information received during discovery and the cost of discovery encourage parties to settle. If you'd like to...
All right, in my post, I respond to what I observed in this Sovereign Citizens moment compilation this way. Sovereign citizens, I understand that there are legitimate reasons for a person to assume a position of self-defense when in an arrest situation while outside of the court or system of incarceration. But once you enter either of these domains, you must have a level of civility and common sense that would make any violation of your human, not civil rights, blatantly obvious to observers, which there would be no shortage of during any hearing or formal arrest due to body cams and court cams. It's how we have camera footage like this converted into entertainment. To enter into a court proceeding with the level of arrogance and sense of entitlement these people demonstrate in these scenes interferes with holding court, security, and law enforcement officials accountable because they are being paid to maintain the proceedings with legal decorum. Being assaulted while attempting to restrain example, which is the very first case that shows up on this particular video compilation. This is where confident humility works in your favor. It is an unfortunate circumstance to be held in contempt of court in a pre-trial hearing for a failure to be respectful, and as a result, an unjust claim is made secondary to a legitimate charge. And I'll pause here because in civil cases, pre-trial hearings look different than they do in criminal cases because of the nature of why you are in court. Sometimes people are in jail or being held in jail before their trial because of whatever it is that they did. And so you're having to discuss this process of discovery during the pretrial hearing, whereas in a civil case, you would have time to sort of look it through and review it. You can still do that with a criminal case, of course, which is why you're given time at the pretrial hearing, while they set the date for either another pretrial hearing or an actual trial at that point. So if you want time to be able to look over everything, then you have time to do it. But of course, if you're incarcerated, people want to make that move along a lot faster. So you don't want to get arrested and locked up for contempt doing a pretrial hearing, especially if you have an opportunity to leave the courtroom and go home between that date and the date of the actual trial. And I hope that makes sense. If you are innocent until proven guilty, you must listen to the accusation and then respond with the appropriate legal code which protects your human, not civil rights in the situation. If you are offered a plea, it makes sense to listen to the agreement requested because it will help you understand the goal of the claim. So you see how this is similar to a settlement in a civil case. If the judge disagrees with your advocacy for recognition of human, not civil rights, you must go to trial, which makes final decisions the ground for legal accountability. People generally want to avoid going to trial. And one of the biggest excuses they give for wanting to avoid going to trial is because of the costs. And the costs are always related to attorney's fees. If you don't have an attorney, you don't have those fees. There are court fees, but court fees are nowhere near the cost of using an attorney. And I'm not saying that people should not use attorneys because they can be very helpful to people who are not fully aware of all of the laws and how to apply them correctly. I just want you to understand how this all works together to keep people in an oppressed state where they aren't looking at what their real rights are and then how to ensure that those rights are enforced. As a side note, I've been looking for sovereign citizen videos of an actual trial. These court clips for entertainment purposes are all pre-trial hearings. Punishment of incarceration for corporate claims seems ridiculously unjust to me. For example, citizens do not benefit from all citizens of a jurisdiction having valid insurance unless court is involved and financial restitution is sought for damages. This seems to be the argument for naming of a victim or accuser in ticketing charges for vehicle operation if there was no vehicle accident involving damage or injury. So what I'm saying is that these are cases where people are pulled over for whatever reason, and then they get a ticket because their license plates are expired, or they find out they don't have valid insurance and things like that. And then as a result, they have to pay a fine. So the question is, who is the victim? But that is not how our judicial system currently functions. It is not relationally based. And that is the point that I was making in the video yesterday. People can still be required to pay for these without insurance if they are guilty of causing harm. So that's me addressing an argument that people not having insurance negatively affects the community, which makes the citizens the victim in those particular charges. Their ability to pay is a deeper problem to be resolved here, the cause of which would complicate the legal process, which is probably why jail time is attached to these kinds of penalties, which makes absolutely no sense to me. It may be a deterrent, but doesn't resolve the issue of capacity to make financial restitution. And I threw that in there because there are people who believe that the legal system works on a payment system, meaning you can break the law as long as you can afford to pay the fines, which is ridiculous. But there are people who are in a financial position to be able to simply pay the fines for breaking the law, which, you know, makes them feel that they are above the law and also makes them part of the problem. If you are operating a vehicle on government policed and maintained roadways, you must meet the standards of safety set by those regulatory codes, because the reason why they were put in place is to prevent things like accidents. If your brakes are not adequate, then there's a highly likelihood that you're going to get in an accident and you're going to cause harm to somebody else's property and probably even the people involved. And so that is why that's important. That is also why people were required to register their vehicles so that everyone could be certain whose car it was and, you know, where they live, so that they could be held accountable and all of those kinds of things. Of course, all of that data is being used for other kinds of things now, but you have to think if you're going to be a sovereign citizen in the native version, then you have to be relationally based and think how any regulations or rules are designed to hold people accountable so that people are able to come together and there be some kind of consequences for your actions. But ultimately, the goal being that everyone walk away feeling like they were heard and that they were restored as best as possible, and they are able to recover from whatever it is that happened between them. If the codes are themselves unreasonable, unjust, or outdated because of how vehicles function, so there might be safety measures that will prevent a person from getting their car inspected and having it approved that are based on standards for older types of vehicles and would not affect the newer vehicles the same way, but the legislation stays the same. And so the inspections are done the same way, for example. It is the responsibility of the community to address those legislatively. You go to city council by talking to your individual city council member who's supposed to represent you, or your delegate in the General Assembly at the state level, or your congressperson at the level of Congress to say, we need to change these because you do not want to leave yourselves as ongoing victims of violations of justice via unfair ticketing. If people are getting a lot of tickets and fines and they're not related to harming people, or creating a huge nuisance for people, like with parking tickets and things like that, because there's limited parking space. And there should be for the number of cars that are registered on a regular basis, there should be no problems with parking. That should be built into the registration process. If there's a saturation of vehicles being registered in an area and you know that parking is a concern based on the number of fines and tickets, then you should not be registering any additional vehicles. You should start limiting the number of vehicles per household, so that not only are things like parking not an issue, but there are also not the same kinds of environmental issues. But again, we do not live in a localized system of governance. You have to travel to do just about everything, to go to work, to go shopping, to get your needs met. Any of those things, you have to be able to travel. My argument for people who want to be sovereign citizens in the way these federal militia non-civilians are is don't have a car. You can use public transportation, ride a bike, or walk, and you won't have any of those problems anymore. Of course, none of this will apply to you if you are actually guilty of a crime, because 100% of the people must agree to do no intentional harm 100% of the time. And I need for people to understand and appreciate why living in a society where 100% of the people make that commitment, make the court and judicial system as well as the policing system a whole lot easier, because you can always fall back on, it wasn't my intention to hurt you, but this is what happens. And so it makes restitution and resolving the matter a lot easier relationally, because everyone understands that and the witnesses would support that. Although everyone would agree that you have to learn whatever it is you need to learn so that you don't make that decision again and cause that same kind of damage again. But if you are actually guilty of a crime and or are a federal citizen non-civilian via your economic or militia connection to the government on any level, local, state, or federal, or even international for that matter. So what I want to share with you now is a clip from one of the sovereign citizen videos that I saw that kind of helps to make this point, because the man who is being charged actually makes a lot of very valid legal points, but because the judge ultimately is able to hold him in contempt because he is going beyond what is involved in a pretrial hearing to state a case that they aren't willing to listen to in the pretrial hearing, which is their right. It's their court system. And you're driving a vehicle on their roads, and so you have to follow the rules to the degree that they set them. But instead of he didn't even wait to hear what the offer was from the city, which would have helped him greatly, because whatever the offer was for what I really consider a harassment level of ticketing, probably would have helped him to make his case better at trial, but it didn't get there. So I thought I would share this with you as an example of a sovereign citizen argument that could have gone much better, but went really wrong, and in lieu of being able to actually find a trial.
What about our next defendant? So now we're talking about a man named James Garner, appearing virtually in a Detroit courtroom in front of Judge Sean Perkins. And there is a lot of confusion right off the bat.
Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
What is your middle name? Can you remove your hat, please? And your scarf. What is your middle name, Mr. Garner?
Earl.
Earl?
No.
He's on the 130 docket, Your Honor, I believe.
James Garner. Earl Garner. James E-R-R-O-L Garner, right?
Yes.
You are on the 130 docket.
If you want, Your Honor, I can give House Counsel an offer right now. She can report it to him.
On James Garner, do you see all the cases he has?
I see just the 4 that are on the docket. Or 5.
Yes.
You've got more?
He's got plenty more.
Okay. You want me to come down, review, and do a global offer?
If you could, please.
Okay, I'm on my way down.
Mr. Garner, do you want to offer on these, or do you want to go to trial?
I would like to know what the charges are.
Okay. This is the city of Detroit versus James Earl Garner. Case number SP 11000435, counts 1, 2, and 3. SP 116950. Those are driving license expired, misdemeanor, no insurance, insurance misdemeanor. Thank you. And an improper plate misdemeanor. All of them punishable by maximum possible penalty of 93 days in jail and or $500 in fines. SP 1169507, counts 1 and counts 2, expired license and no insurance misdemeanor, both punishable by 93 days in jail and or $500 in fines. SP 1169521, same improper plates, same punishment, $500 and 93 days in jail and or $500 in fines, maximum possible penalty.
Okay, that is a lot of charges and citations. The judge slogging his way through all of them, but he doesn't seem to get much further after that.
Appearance for the record, please.
Sherika Harris on behalf of Mr. Garner. Mr. Garner, please state your name for the record.
First off, I do have a couple.
You got to state your name first. You got to state your name first.
No,
Let's
I think,
start there.
wait a minute, Ms. Harris. Wait a minute, Ms. Harris. I think Mr. Garner is going to represent himself. Am I correct, Mr. Garner?
I'm representing myself in what? I mean, I'm confused about what's actually going on. First off, who's alleging these charges? That's what I'm curious about.
State of Michigan, city of Detroit.
Okay, well, if that's the case, there's a common law principle which states that for there to be a crime, there must be a victim. Corpus delicti. The state cannot be the injured party. And in the absence of a victim, there can be no crime.
Withdrawing my name from the record on that one. Thank you.
I know. How do you want to proceed, Mr. Garner? You set the matter. I'll enter a not guilty plea on his behalf. Give him a $0 bond. Either set the matter for trial, or I'll wait for the city to give you an offer. What do you want to do?
Well, the court hasn't even established jurisdiction. I mean, in order for jurisdiction has to be established first, and there's no jurisdiction established. And once jurisdiction is challenged, that must be settled before charges can be brought.
All right. Do you want to put that in a motion, sir?
As far as I'm concerned, any and all charges must be dismissed because there is no complaining witness, and the state cannot be.
I'm not gonna listen. If that's your motion, I'm gonna deny the motion. Okay. So all we're gonna do now, we're not gonna keep going back and forth. Either you take an offer or you set the matter for trial. Which one do you want?
Respectfully, in order for this to continue, there must be a complaining witness, and the state cannot be a complaining witness. Now, if I'm entitled to a fair trial, the law states there must be a victim. I'm just requesting, who is the victim? Who did I injure?
The citizens of the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan are the victims.
The state cannot be a victim. And if that's the case,
I said the citizens of the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan are the victims.
If that's the case,
Mr. Garner, can we just go into a breakout room and then maybe I can give you a little bit of advice to assist you with moving forward? Would you be agreeable to that?
Sure.
Okay, awesome.
Garner comes back to the public Zoom meeting, but he's still uncooperative, and the judge has had enough.
I believe he's ready, Your Honor. He's representing himself.
Let's go back on the record with Garner. What do you want to do, Mr. Garner? Do you want a trial date, or you want an offer? Those are really your only two options.
Okay, since we are on the record, all I'm asking for is the
Okay, one last time. Now listen. here's how it's gonna go from this point on. If you don't answer the question that I asked specifically, then I'm gonna hold you in contempt of court, and we're gonna move from that point on, right? Get up, Mr. Raymond.
So you're telling me,
Mr. Garner. We're not gonna have a
court is just gonna violate the
conversation. Stop, sir. Stop, sir. Now, that's the last time I'm gonna ask you to speak
on the law. Is that what I'm hearing?
All right.
I'm asking.
I'm gonna hold Mr. Garner in contempt of court. He is directly violating the court's order. I've asked him repeatedly to not interfere or add any extra commentary to this case. I've given him ample time to answer the court's question, and he continues to refuse to do so. So now I'm going to hold you in contempt, and I'm going to sentence you to 30 days Wayne County Jail, no early release.
So that means that the court is just going to violate my rights because I'm defending myself? Is that what I'm hearing?
30 days, Wayne County Jail, no early release.
Oh boy. All right, next up, we're in Michigan.
You cannot overcome an antisocial government with antisocial people being given legal immunity, which contributes to their lawlessness. Another way of saying that is Martin Luther King's quote, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." So I hope that this video has helped someone. I will continue to respond to questions about the information I'm sharing via video when it makes sense to do so. The important thing to understand as far as I'm concerned is that the earth is dying. And it is dying because of the level of lawlessness being exhibited by people who would interfere with those of us who are interested in moving towards paradise worldwide, which means 100% of the people agree to do no intentional harm 100% of the time, and that 100% of the children, their biological parents and families, are safe, protected, healthy, and happy. Until people are willing to tell the truth, the whole truth, and be accountable for that, justice will elude us.